welcome to another episode of the CodePub podcast. Today, we have a developer who's been around for more than 20 years in the industry, one of the most prominent speakers I happen to know, and a functional programming aficionado. So, Weko, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Okay, let's get right into it. How did you first get into programming?
Well, it happened a long time ago. I was in the 7th grade elementary school, and that's something like 13 years old, I think. And I knew I liked computer before that. I specifically liked computer games, like Moon Patrol was big at the time. So whenever I wasn't home when I was supposed to be, my parents would come and pick me up from the local arcade. And then there was a new school opening in my town, and they announced that they have this thing called computers, real computers.
Cool.
Yeah. Those things turned out to be some kind of stripped off 286, or I have no idea what they were. Apparently they were made in one city over by some guy in his garage or something like that. They were called Marta. There's just no resources about them on the internet. Yeah, because I think the guy died in the meantime.
Right.
Yeah. And we basically had some book and we typed in a basic program.
Right.
And then I got that feeling. I entered 2 integers and the computer multiplied.
Nice.
At that moment, I knew this was something that I want to do the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I was an early adopter, so to say. I managed to find what I want to do, solving problems using computers.
That's cool. That's an awesome origin story, actually. So, okay, to switch gears a bit, what's your current favorite programming language? What's your current favorite programming paradigm and so forth?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'm a bit of a polyglot, and I want to work with different technologies and different approaches, and I want to find the best solution to a specific problem. Because oftentimes if you just use JavaScript or just use C# or Java, then each problem looks like a Java microservice.
Right.
I want to analyze it and I want to pick up the best solution to the problem. And of course, the existing code base is a huge factor in that. If you have 20 Java microservices, most likely the 21st will also be a Java microservice. But currently, I'm tending towards one of my longtime loves, and those are C#, .NET and .NET Core specifically, and TypeScript. I was an extremely early adopter of TypeScript, I might say, because once I saw the initial demonstration it was on Build or whatever the conference was called before that, by Anders Helsberg, one of my personal idols, by the way. When I saw that this is what the JavaScript ecosystem needed. This was the exact solution to the exact problem. I felt that somebody thought about how to solve the actual problem the developers had and not just make another language as were popular at that time, 10 years ago, 2012, actually. And when I saw that, I said, I have to try this. And I tried it, and it actually worked. And I said, okay, I have a project that has a bunch of JavaScript in it. I'm going to write a lot of code in TypeScript, compile it into JavaScript, and then serve out the JavaScript. And my manager at the time didn't know that, but we officially deployed TypeScript generated code in production in October of 2012.
It worked. I assume, right?
It definitely worked. It was idiomatic JavaScript. It was good JavaScript.
Nobody had to know it was actually TypeScript in the background, but like, who
Yeah,
cares?
I told them, but they said, okay, Weko is playing around with something. If it works, it works.
It works. Yeah. I totally get that. So, okay, let's switch gears to like how did you get into your professional career as a developer first? Like, I assume you got into academia, into like academic education before you became a professional programmer, right?
Yes and no,
Okay.
to be honest. I finished high school. I decided that I'm going to go to a programming university. Basically, in Skopje, we had at the time exactly two options. I chose the one at the electrical faculty.
Mm-hmm.
I started good. To be honest, I'm also a bit of a mathematician, so I like those parts of programming. Not every developer needs to be a mathematician, but generally people who really understand mathematics tend to be a bit better developers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I was there for a year or 2 or 3, and then I had some friends who had jobs, so I kind of got employed unofficially at first, and then I was kind of supporting a system that people were actually using, so everything became official. So my university days kind of lagged. I was by the time I was at the end of my university story, I was only had the thesis left and the mandatory internship.
Right, yeah.
So at the end, it turned out that I was interning under myself. Yeah, on the official documentation, I'm my own mentor.
Oh, wow.
Because by that time, I was working for the biggest telecom in Macedonia. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that I was the guy who's responsible for the interns. And I was supposed to have an internship myself, so of course I interned with myself. Yeah, of course a lot of other people had to sign it because that's a telecom and there's a lot of bosses and bosses. But the initial mentor who approved that the intern was quite good, and he was impressive, to be honest.
Nice.
I couldn't have done it better myself.
You had a good mentor, obviously. So yeah. All right. So your current title, your professional title is head of development. So what is a head of development? What does a head of development do actually?
Well, I kind of picked my own title, specifically because it's not well defined. Mm-hmm. There's not a strict definition what a head of development should and shouldn't do. Basically, a head of development, in my opinion, is somebody who takes care of the developers inside the company. And by development, I mean a software development company. The head of development should make sure that the actual developers have the resources, have the means to do their job.
Right.
Whether that means offices, whether that means licenses, whether that means training, whether that means encouraging them on a one-on-one basis, or basically just being there and being support for when they have some kind of a technical problem.
Right.
So basically, all the fun things about the software developments, with none of the boring ones.
Yeah, okay, I can appreciate that, sure. There's certainly a mentorship aspect to it. So how would you describe that? How is that something you like doing, the educational and the mentorship aspect of being a head of dev?
One of my personal mottos is that I love making better programs and better programmers. So to be honest, I love mentoring. I love teaching people, and I love the moment when I see that my mentee gets some kind of an epiphany, right. That I said something and I see in their eyes that something clicked for them. And at that moment, they, like that, became a better developer. And hopefully they will get even better and even better and even better. And after a while, it gets to the point, of course, when we have a discussion on equal footing.
Right, of course.
Yeah, when I get a lot of pushback and these technical details that I might not even be aware of. And that's great.
Of course. It sounds like something wholesome and enjoyable for sure. What's your approach when you're trying to mentor and educate somebody?
Yeah, well, I tend to be kind of laid back and extremely informal. And to be honest, I've had some failures with people who expect the rigidity, certain rigidity in the process. So I personally work best with other people who want to get the job done, want to achieve something. And the means are just means that are not constrained by procedure. Yeah, I love the Agile manifesto by itself, the principles of Agile. Mm-hmm. Not the way that Agile is right now, because it's mostly a framework or something like that. In my understanding, Agile is those 4 or 5, I don't remember exactly, I think there were 4, guidelines, so to say. So you have people over process. So you nurture the person. And for me personally, I have to like that person a bit. Mm-hmm. And then I'm naturally friendly.
Right. I see. So, okay, for somebody who's new to the industry and who that career path that sort of has an informal note to it, how does one get into that line of job? How does one get to that point in a career if they choose to go into programming, for example?
In a word, be curious. Find out what's the stuff underneath the stuff. You need to have a drive to know things, to build things, to make things, to break things as well. And those kind of people with that kind of internal curiosity that don't just want to do a job and then go home, but that really want to know what they are doing, why they are doing it, why this way is better than that way. That need to try all the possible answers until they get to the correct one. That kind of mentality is very helpful, and everything else is basically details and learning specific stuff.
Cool. That's good advice. I would certainly agree to that. Okay, let's switch gears to something more technical. In your bio, you mentioned specifically C# and JavaScript. And you mentioned that you have a love-hate relationships with both languages.
No.
Okay.
I love C# all the way, and it loves me.
All right.
Yeah, with JavaScript, that's the love-hate.
All right.
Yeah, I started with JavaScript in 1998 or 1999.
So you remember i6, I imagine, and even before
I
that?
remember i4.
Well,
yeah. i6 was at the time actually a great browser that standardized a lot of things.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. If you think that debugging JavaScript is hard, try debugging it without a console. I actually debug using window.status.
Oh, wow.
That's the thing that says connecting right now. I don't know if it's available on modern Chrome or...
I think like they sort of sunsetted the API as a whole, so...
Yeah. So basically the only way to do something was to either write it out on the screen or write it out in a Windows status. And that's just a single string. If you need to write 2 things, sorry for you. We actually used to put an alert between the 2 strings. So then you have, because an alert is one of the very few JavaScript things that are actually blocking. And then you need to click the alert. And especially it was extremely fun when you put an alert inside a for loop.
Oh boy.
And until EA didn't have process isolation. So basically you had a single process for all the browsers, and if you managed to put an alert in a for loop that executes 2000 times, you had 2 choices. You could click 2000 times, or you could kill the entire process and all of your tabs, all of your windows, all of the web pages that you are reading are just gone.
Right.
Yeah, this was before Chrome automatically remembered that you had that. This was 10 years before Chrome existed, actually.
The olden days and the dark days of the web, for sure.
So from then on, it was the love-hate relationship with JavaScript. I actually started with web development around that time. I was using a language which had an extremely fancy name, Cold Fusion.
Oh, okay, remember that one.
Yeah, and that was kind of a scripting platform. It was revolutionary for its day. Right now it sounds antiquated, and it is. But at the time we had, basically that was the time of the old client-server application. So it was kind of assumed that you would install a huge computer with a server and then go around and install specific desktop applications for all clients. And we had a URL. You just type the URL and you have an application. That was considered at the time, wow, something revolutionary. And we were able to do that with Cold Fusion. But that is a server-side rendering engine. And I started asking myself, it would be better and faster and UX will be much nicer if we didn't re-render it each time. So I started dabbling with things that you can do on the client side, and I stumbled upon JavaScript, which was relatively new at that time. And I know that I still remember one time when I debugged for a day some code concerning dates and things like that. I learned the hard way that the months in JavaScript are zero-based.
Oh.
Yeah, because it was always trying to push it into the next year when I said the month it's 12. And I remember that I had a misplaced equal sign. Mm-hmm. Instead of, in an if statement, instead of 2, I had just 1 and it crapped up everything. Yeah. The only way to find it was basically to stare at the code.
Yeah, I can understand that the tools really weren't great back in the day. They've improved quite a bit, so...
By leaps and bounds.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what's your opinion of modern JavaScript compared to that?
I'm actually using modern TypeScript, to be honest, for server-side development, without any issues or problems. It's maybe, in some cases, my preferred language for server-side development. Mm-hmm. So it's gotten to a point where TypeScript development is great, and the experience developing it is great. Mm-hmm. Because one of my pet peeves, for example, for C# is the array initialization syntax.
Right, okay.
Yeah. In JavaScript and TypeScript basically have the most beautiful object and array initialization syntax. You just say this is an object and that's an object. And with TypeScript, that object actually has a type, so you can play around with it and you can have code completion and all the nice things that you get in the static languages.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
I'm strong on types. If that didn't come across until now, I will explicitly say it. I love strongly typed languages.
Yeah, we'll get into that a bit later. I certainly agree on that myself personally. So, compared to JavaScript, what is it that you like with C# as a language?
I've been a Microsoft guy a long time. So that was one thing, that it was easy with C#. It was easy in starting from version 1.0. It was easy to develop Windows applications for desktop Windows. And before that, I was using Delphi, I was using VB6, and those were okay applications, but they weren't ideal. Mm-hmm. And C# and WinForms, when they came, that was a huge jump ahead. As I said, I'm a Hellsberg fan.
Yeah.
So he was the chief architect of Object Pascal, mm-hmm. which became Delphi. And I loved that. But after he left Borland, they kind of lost the feel. They didn't know what to do, in which direction to move. So I'm going to quote another guy that used to work Delphi a lot. that they drove off a cliff, they managed to climb back, and then they drove off a cliff again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Delphi was great. And then people started talking that Anders Helsberg is working on something huge for Microsoft, and out came C#. And I loved the language. It was basically a mix of the best parts of Delphi with the best parts of C. And a lot of Java, to be honest. A lot of the things are straight up copied from Java.
I mean, that's true. It was sort of the zeitgeist kind of thing that Java was very popular in certain circles.
Yeah. It was still unproven at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because if you remember the huge... I'm showing my age once more, but the promise that Java made was that Java was the language for the web.
Right.
The killer feature of Java was Java applets, client-side code that will run on your machine, and you will be able to communicate with the server that is somewhere in the internet.
That ended up being a pipe dream, and for good reasons.
Yeah, and that it's not that it started and then it died. It was stillborn.
Yeah.
Nobody used Java for an applet because the development experience was abysmal. The deployment experience was even worse. So, unfortunately, I have some experience with that, and no part of that process was enjoyable.
Yeah, and in theory, it used to have a debugging bridge which only worked in theory, so yeah, there was that in the whole story for sure. All right.
Yeah, and from the UX side, well, it turned out that Java, it ran on every machine, but it was equally ugly on every machine.
Yeah, of course. Just because it can doesn't mean it should.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into programming paradigms a bit. You told me that you like functional programming, and I described you as a functional programming aficionado on the start of the episode. So what is it exactly that you like about functional programming?
Well, basically my view of functional programming is kind of simplistic. If I can have functions as first-class values, everything else is details. Everything else is doable. So in that sense, I'm feeling that functional programming is a tool that I have in my tool belt, and I think that every developer should have it in their tool belt and be comfortable with functions as values. If they're comfortable with functions as value, they can use monads. They don't have to create new monads. They can, as long as they can effectively use map filter and reduce and know what those things are doing, everything else is details. You don't have to be somebody who is able to craft lenses with 20 arrows in the signature. Yeah, basically humans' brains can understand at most 2 arrows in a single line. If there's a third arrow, even I have to say, okay, what is this thing doing?
Right. It gives you pause. Yeah, I can understand that. It's a bit...
Functions are complicated. But if you start thinking about them as both pieces of code and pieces of data, that's functional programming.
Right, I mean, I get that. It's sort of how I think about Lisp, for example, because it's, in a way, it's, to me, one of the most practical implementations of what functional programming should look like. Maybe we could, disagree or debate on syntax, but the spirit of it is something entirely different, like the practical thing that functional programming is supposed to be.
Yeah. Of course, Haskell is purer.
Yeah, of course.
But Haskell is beautiful and utterly unpractical.
Yeah, I mean, there are applications written in it, but I imagine it would be done quite faster.
Mostly is to prove that you can do it in Haskell.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. Why should you?
Exactly.
And there's been a tendency, and I'm able to see it just because I have all of that experience, and I remember how things were 20 years ago. There's been a tendency for some kind of a convergent evolution of languages. Because languages right now are quite unashamed of borrowing or straight out stealing features from one another. await is a great concept.
Yeah.
Await is a concept that makes asynchronous code which breaks people's minds
True.
into a synchronously looking pattern. And that was introduced in C#. And a bunch of languages, TypeScript first and foremost, literally stole that idea and reused it. And right now we have the async await pattern in a whole bunch of languages, and it's making a whole lot of developers' life easier.
Yeah, I can agree. Like, if the pattern makes sense in a certain language, there's no reason to invent a new wheel for a different language. If you can translate the concept, I mean, why wouldn't you, you know?
Yeah, the same thing with functions as values, that with sequences that was initially developed in ML or things like that. A lot of things are crossing over from one language to another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a good reason for that, and I actually personally like that happens. I think it's a good...
Yeah, so I think that it's still not finished, it's still ongoing, but I think that in 10 or 15 years, basically a language is more like a style guide than a specific thing. Mm-hmm. Right now you have classes in JavaScript and private methods in JavaScript, and you have basically records in C#. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm most familiar with those languages, so that's why I'm using those examples. Yeah, things that were unthinkable, that everybody thought that were antithesis to the language. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to add them, but people want them and people use them. Yeah, so right now a language in 10 or 15 years will be just what kind of braces you're using and where are you putting your semicolons, or even if you're using semicolons.
Yeah, so like the ultimate evolution, according to what I'm hearing, is just a general purpose language, and you can express yourself, in which you can express yourself like in any paradigm you see fit, I suppose. Yes. Right, so do classes, do functions, do whatever, like you do you basically, right?
Yeah, and mix and match whatever makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a very pragmatic approach. I like that for sure. So, okay, let's switch gears to community speaking and stuff like that. You're one of the most prominent speakers I happen to know on our corner of the planet. How did you first get into doing presentations, speaking, community work in general?
Well, it was with a few guys that we decided to start a .NET community. At the time, it was 2008-ish, I think. Or no, it was before that. We decided to have that, and it turned out that that was something that was missing here in this part of the world, and people started appearing, and people started liking that and commenting and providing feedback that it was great, it was something that was needed. And to be honest, it felt great to give back to the community. I still remember that my first open presentation was about reflection in C#. Yeah, how to basically make search C# dynamic before it was dynamic. At the moment when I got that first applause, I was definitely addicted to this. So I wanted more and more and more. And I am usually, as I said, I'm relatively informal. I try my lectures to be more like a discussion, more like a focus on what the audience wants to hear. It's not that I want to just say what I have to say and bye guys, but I want to entertain them, so to say.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a kind of a stand-up programmer.
Yeah, that's actually a very cool title. I think that should be formalized in some way for sure. I love that. All right, so like...
Yeah, it's stolen from a guy who's a stand-up mathematician.
Oh, right, I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, he has a YouTube channel and he's very funny.
All right. We can share that in the show notes later for sure. So, are you keeping count actually of the presentations you've done so far? How many you've done?
That's a problem. I try to keep to basically list everything, and it's more than 50, less than 100 at the moment, I think. But to be honest, I have no idea.
Right.
I think that I've held in almost all Balkan countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's been fun because the culture is essentially the same but subtly different. And it's always nice. I've held talks in Germany, in Holland, in UK, in Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun there as well, for different reasons. But I'm definitely a Balkan guy.
No, I get that. What's your most interesting experience in talking, speaking, giving a presentation?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Or multiple, it doesn't have to be a single one, just like...
One of the great things is the things that go around with conferences is the things that go around the conference. And to be honest, there's usually a lot of alcohol involved. Maybe some other substances, I don't know what they are. But anyway, that part is essential. And I remember that I had a great presentation. I think it was in Belgrade. And we kind of stayed up drinking until 5 a.m. and my presentation was at 9 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And I was terribly tired. And the presentation was about garbage collection.
All right.
And I titled it Gradska Čistoća. Which
We'll
is
have a translation for that.
Yeah, that is the company in Belgrade that actually empties out the trash each day. Yeah. So that does the garbage collection.
Right.
Yeah, and I was wearing my vest. Those guys know very specific vests, and I was coming into the audience, into the lecture hall wearing that vest, and everybody started laughing even there. And it's a totally serious presentation because I'm talking about deep stuff like finalizers and how C# differs from C++ and how the heap and the stack in C# work in specifics. But I know that everybody had a great time because after that, a lot of people came in and said this was extremely interesting. I had a lot of fun.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a very cool experience for sure. Do you have any advice for newcomers that are just getting into speaking, that would like to start speaking, getting involved with the community?
Don't be afraid. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I love, and I mean love, about the developer community is that everybody is approachable. Everybody who is on a social network, you can write to them, and they might not see your message, but if they see it, they will write you back. Because every one of those characters, each one of them, they like to speak to people. They like software development, and that's why we are doing it. To be honest, nobody ever got rich from speaking at the developers conference.
True, yeah.
Yeah, even Steve Wozniak does it because he likes it. He doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just compared myself to Steve Wozniak.
Nah.
Yeah, like that's the thing. No. We're on different levels.
No, I mean, yeah, there are certainly
another personal hero of mine.
No, I can certainly see some parallels with you and Steve Wozniak for sure, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, like, yeah. So, okay, let's switch gears to something more technical again. You mentioned in your bio that you like code quality and code quality metrics and so forth. So, it's an interesting question, especially for newcomers. How do you define code quality?
You don't. That's why you have a mentor.
All right.
Yeah. So basically, that's the point of software craftsmanship. Uh-huh. Yeah, because writing software is a craft. And we only have one way how to learn a craft. And that way was actually perfected like 600 years ago. So first you have to be an apprentice, then you get to be a journeyman, and then you get to be a master. Mm-hmm. And we have those stages in every craft.
Right.
And craft, it's important to understand what a craft is. Craft is something that is a job that you need to do. but something that involves creativity. And a lot of things that you don't even think of as crafts are crafts. Making rings, that's an obvious craft. Neurosurgery, that's also a craft.
Yeah.
And the only way to learn it is to do it under the guidance of somebody who knows it better than you.
Right, so that's sort of at odds with the classical academia setting, I suppose, that you're supposed to be learning it for an X amount of years and then you can get into industry just...
No, those things are actually complementary. Yeah, I'm going to use the neurosurgeons again.
Sure.
To be an apprentice neurosurgeon, you have to have the academical knowledge. You have to know a lot about anatomy. You have to know a lot about things. You have to know lots and lots and lots of stuff about lots of fields. And when you get to that point, you get to be able to start to be an apprentice to a master neurosurgeon. They have different titles now. They don't call them journeyman. Nobody's a journeyman neurosurgeon. Yeah. In the US, I think they call them attendings or something like that.
Yeah.
But the same three levels are all over the place. In the software industry, we usually use juniors, mid-year, senior.
Yeah.
But those are the same three divisions.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember that there was a whole kerfuffle on Twitter a couple of years ago that the whole branch of programming should be treated as a craft primarily, and masters should train apprentices like directly instead of having like this nebulous setting in which like a person manages a bunch of people and so forth. It was an interesting experiment. I think that it even had some interesting results, but it didn't seem to stick. Maybe we should try it again, perhaps.
Yeah. I have no opinion about whether we want to try it formally or not, but informally, that's how it works. Everybody will, every senior developer at the moment, or architect, or principal, or whatever they want to call themselves, or head of development, can tell you who was their mentor, who was the guy they went to when they had a technical problem when they were just starting up. And maybe that was not somebody who was assigned to be a mentor.
Right.
But that guy existed. It was, sorry, I messed this up. How do I fix it? What do I do now? And somebody will come, take a look at the code, and will say, well, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, try it this way. I have no idea what you're doing here. And the good thing is that a lot of those people are also approachable. They want to tell you what you did wrong. They want to, it's not personal. When they're critiquing, and that's a very important advice for young people. When they're critiquing your code, people are not critiquing you. Yeah, because a lot of developers tend to use fancy language when speaking about code. They will say, this is the worst code ever, or something like that. This code should be shot. That is my my go-to thing. But they're not critiquing you. They actually want to say that this is a very great first attempt. Let's do it better on the second one. Because let's not forget, software development is an iterative process.
It is.
Yeah, we are trying something. We are learning by doing. So in order to do it good, we need to do it bad.
Yeah, of course, nobody starts doing it great from the get-go. We all have to start somewhere and learn from something, so...
Yeah, but even today, when I start writing code, I'm always... and I do have a YouTube channel when I'm developing, for example, solutions for the advent of code puzzles. And you can see what is my process. And I start with a baseline, and then I get a bunch of compilers, and then I fix them. And then I'm moving on and moving on. It's not that I start and code magically appears. Okay, I'm using GitHub Copilot, so a part of the code does magically appear. But it's not like the solution that I want to write magically appears when I touch the keyboard.
Yeah, you can't tell like your AI assistant to basically code an entire solution for advent of code for you yet. Maybe someday, but still it's not able to do that.
with GitHub, that was a bit of a problem because unlike GPT-3, Copilot it has access to the internet and is continuously updating. So if I started, it was noticeable that if I started my solution early in the day, Copilot wouldn't know about the solution. But if I started it the next day, it would already have enough of a solution base that it will just say, "Oh, you're trying to solve that." Just press tab. No, I didn't use that, but because with AI assistants, which are a very current team, they're good. They can shorten the development time, but they don't replace the developer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're a tool, like just another. I see it as just another tool in your toolbox.
Yeah. So at the very least, it can generate it. I think a friend of mine, who is also an extremely nice speaker from Serbia, Zoran Horvat, has a very nice video about how he is using GPT, not GPT, but the Copilot. Mm-hmm. And he mentions 3 specific use cases, which are basically in line with how you can use Copilot to actually add value. Right. Because, of course, Copilot can suggest a huge chunk of code and you can just say accept, but you still don't have no idea what it does. That's just like searching something on Stack Overflow and pasting inside your code. It might work, but it might not. Yeah. And when it doesn't, you're back where it starts.
Yeah, it's not great. Copilot-driven development as a paradigm. I guess that's going to happen at some point, maybe. What got you into Advent of Code? Because I noticed that you have a YouTube channel and most of your content has to do with like a yearly run of Advent of Code.
Well, that's on me because I kind of plan all the time, okay, I'm going to put out more videos, and then real life gets in the way and I say, it's nice, but it's going to happen next week, and then December comes, and I really love doing those puzzles. And I love that I'm able to use them as a teaching moment. Mm-hmm. So, weirdly, I'm not sad when it turns out that I messed up something. Mm-hmm. Because I use that, and you can even see that I get excited with something that doesn't work. Yeah, so now we get to debug this and see how this goes and how this thing will do. And I'm showing things like how do you debug recursive functions, how do you analyze performance and things like that.
Right. No, it's a fun experience. I mean, for what it's worth, I think that you should do more videos on various topics, not just for Advent of Code, but, that's just me for sure.
I am constantly trying and failing.
Yeah, I get that. I can relate, trust me. All right. Is there anything like that I didn't ask, not just a topic that you would like to talk about?
That's an extremely open-ended question. I want to talk maybe a bit about young people who are just getting into development. And I want to emphasize it once again that I love developers. Not because they are technical people, but because who they are. I don't think there is another field when the open source movement could have been successful. Because we have a lot of people in this field that actually love what they are doing. First and foremost, me, I have the most personal experience with myself. Mm-hmm. After a quarter of a century working in this field, I still love it every day. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are moments, it's not fun and games literally all the time.
Of course, yeah.
But most of the work is fun. It's rewarding work. It's work that when I'm solving actual problems for actual people. And I can see that my work is kind of marginally and extremely fractionally making the world a little bit better. And that is a huge driver for a lot of people. And they want to talk with people. So more or less the currency between developers is respect. What have you done? That's why we all have public GitHub profiles when we do things. Some more, some less, but still we love to doing things out in the open. We love to showing things that we've built. Mm-hmm. And not just here's the product, I'm going to sell it, but look at how I made this.
Yeah. For no like monetary incentive or something. We just like to show that you've built something cool, perhaps, and you want people to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the public repos on GitHub have a fork button.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so you want to make something with this? Feel free.
Yeah, it's a big and cool part of the culture for sure. So, okay, any picks, anything you're currently working on, anything you would like to emphasize or to share with people?
Nothing specific at the moment. I do have some things planned, but I'm gonna jinx it.
All right. Cool. So, okay, thank you very much for being a guest on the CodePub podcast. And I was very happy to interview you today.
It was fun being here.
Thank you very much. I would love to have you on again. And for everybody that listened to us, peace out and talk to you next time.